Okay, what about this? This one will have a delay. And the levels look good on my end. Real quick, that might help. How's that? Hmm. I'll wait for the stream to catch up. Can you hear me now? Very odd. Uh, it's okay now. Okay, thank you very much. Avu. And Patrick and Andre. I appreciate that. Okay. Sounds on now. Okay, fantastic. There will be a little bit of a delay. I don't know why that channel isn't working. Just don't look at my face, I guess, if the delay bothers you. Okay, so what we're doing is we're adding a story for people to ask where the data comes from, so we can include our data acknowledgement. So, and we're gonna save this. There we go. Okay, so I think it just didn't save before because it wasn't a complete story. So we're gonna need to add some things to our assistant. To make this work, we're gonna need a response. We're gonna add a new one. Create new, utter, and I believe we called it data underscore ACK. The data that this quiz was trained on. It's a little small. Let me make that bigger. Utter data ACK. The data that this quiz was trained on. And I'm just going to really quickly look up the full acknowledgement. To go back to the I put it in the description of the YouTube video, so I'm just going and finding one of the YouTube videos thing so I can copy and paste to make sure that it looks the same. Oh, wasn't on that one. Ugh. Let's see this one, hopefully. Could I have done this before the stream? I mean, I guess yeah, but we're working on we'll be working on trained on comes from the data that this quiz was trained on comes from the Harvard Dialect Survey data collected by Bert Vox and Scott Golder in 2003. Special thanks to Bert Vox for sharing. All right, and let's save this real quick. And you will notice that it says that we need to train the model to finalize the edit. I'm going to finish doing everything we need to do, and then I'm going to train the model. Also, if you use the assistant and you noticed that the final response was didn't have the edits that we made on Friday, it is because I forgot to train the model. Actually, I think I thought about it and was like, oh no, I didn't change the NLU model. I don't need to train the model. Obviously, I need to train the model. I made a change, and the way that somebody asked about CI/CD, the way that you work on a model and you make updates and then you make sure that you can roll back those updates if you need to and you track them is that every time you make updates and you're like, okay, this is a version I'm ready to send to users, is you train a new model and then you make that the active model, and that's it. That's a CI/CD. And everyone's saying the audio is great. Good. I'm a little confused as to why the channel that I was using wasn't working, so I'll spend some time today figuring that out. The other thing that we need is we need some intents. NLU data. So, let's add an example, and the intent is, I think we need to add it in the domain first, right? Also, what do we call it? Listen, data provenance is what we called it. And I'm just going to copy that because I'm never going to remember that. So I think we need to add it to the domain first and add it as an intent. Oh, nope, it's already been added. Okay. So we don't actually need to do that. And I'm pretty sure all of these inconsistencies, yeah, so all these inconsistencies are about things in the code. Utter live code warning was found in the domain, but is missing in the training data. I think we actually removed the utter live code warning. I think we merged that in with the, so this was saying, hey, you're in a live code, and I believe that we merged that in with the, hey, do you want to start the assistant? So I am going to remove that from domain. But the rest of these we can just ignore for now. We're going to have to deal with them at some point, but not now. Okay, and then NLU data. Are you sure you want to navigate away before saving the new domain? I do, in fact, want to save the changes. Thank you for that helpful nudge. NLU data. Okay, so let's add some examples. Where is the training data from? And data provenance. There we go. Save that. I'll add a couple more. How else would you say? How do you know about the dialects? I guess is sort of some way somebody might say that. What else might somebody say? If the thing that I want to know is where you got the training data from, what data I don't know. I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time coming up with good ways of saying this that I think that someone might come. How do you know what people say in different states? I think that should be enough to get us started at least. Okay, so we now have a new story, data provenance, where the user will ask, you know, where's the data from? And then the assistant will use the utter data acknowledgement response to let them know about the provenance of the data. And I think I'm also going to really quickly add that to, oh, is the other link no longer active? Interesting. Okay. I was going to add that to the description of what the assistant does, but when I opened the share with guest testers link, I didn't see the existing description that we wrote last time. So I guess we'll leave that for another time. But let's just really quickly train a new model. Shouldn't take long. And then we will set that model as the active model once it's done so that it'll actually be used. And then we'll go through and look at some of the conversation data that we have. So the other thing that I want to do, thank you kindly, the other thing that I want to do, make this the active model, there we go, is to work on toxic language. So this is anything that you know, would be inappropriate to say to somebody, swearing, abuse, morally reprehensible stuff, I guess. So I've been thinking a lot about how I want my assistant to handle this. And I think what makes sense is, So there's many different ways that different assistants handle this. So if you swear at Google Assistant, for example, it files a bug report because it assumes that whatever made you upset is a bug. But I think that this is a fun sort of like quiz thing, and there's really no consequences if people can't finish it. So I think what's going to happen is that I will just end the conversation if somebody says something abusive. And that's my plan. So a couple things we need to figure out. So the first thing I think is going to be going through and looking at the conversations and identifying anything that is toxic or abusive. So let's add an intent to our domain. Oh, hot. These insulated mugs do work. Robbie says, if anyone uses Rasa X on local mode, how are they able to see all the conversations? It should look the same. You should still see all the conversations. Yeah. So, actually, I think we have a little walkthrough with me on top of this. Your assistant is talking to users. Now let's use those conversations to improve your assistant's NLU classification. Let's do it. That's exactly what I want to do right now. Improve your assistant with data from real conversations. The NLU inbox collects new messages that don't exist in your training data. The Mark Correct button adds the message as a training example with a selected intent. Add it straight away if the prediction is correct, or correct the intent if before adding if the prediction was wrong. So this is just describing the annotation procedures. And it looks like we don't actually have anything in our NLU inbox. I don't think I restarted the server. I'm pretty sure I didn't. But what we want to do first, I think I'm actually going to go through and just go through the conversations one by one. And first I want to go to my domain and I want to add an intent, which is, I think just toxic language. Yeah, so let's just find stuff for the intent and then create stories to talk about what to do with those. I don't know why I keep trying to save with hotkeys. I mean, I do. It's because what is what I use in other places. So save changes. And let's go to conversations and do some annotations and check things out. All right, so we have some testers. And let's go from the bottom up. So I believe that these on the 21st are all me. Yep, yeah. These are me figuring out how the thing works. And then 26 should be, that one was me figuring stuff out. This one was me figuring stuff out. That one was the one where it worked. So I think this one is going to be the first one with a user. Maybe. All right. And I'm gonna zoom out just a tiny bit. And then once we've reviewed it, we can mark it as reviewed. So, do you want to take a quiz to learn about where in the United States people talk more like you? Before getting started, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so, and then they said nothing. Actually, this might have been me as well. But I think this conversation is reviewed. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think this is a perfectly reasonable conversation if someone was like, hey, I want to try this out. And then they're like, oh, but I don't want to see my answers seen on live stream, so I'm just going to pop out. And I think that is absolutely fine. Okay. And here we go. 1022 tester. Yeah, all right. Here is some toxic language. Yeah, these are things that it would be completely unacceptable to say to people in real life, and it's also unacceptable to say to an assistant. So the warning was on the tin. There will be toxic language in this one. And guess what? It's unacceptable, and my assistant is not going to accept it. Okay. So, all right. Roly-poly is fine. Soda's fine. These go and incorrect intent. This should actually be toxic language. There we go. Save that to training data. I don't know enough to know if that's toxic or not. homie should be fine. Faisa says, how can we make an intent as a welcome intent when the bot started? Oh, so how does the assistant start the conversation? Yes, we will do that in the future. But the way that you do it is when you launch the assistant, you can actually send like a silent intent that it's not from the user, but it looks like it comes from the user. And it will be that first turn where like we say hi, where you can just do like /greet or whatever the name of the intent is, and then the assistant will be like, ah, that's the intent, and then kick off the conversation from there. All right. Also, I should say that it's unfortunately not super uncommon for bots to receive toxic language. Just really quickly, I'm going to respond to Geeky Girl Sarah, recent follower, first time watcher. Is this a for fun bot project or a for work bot project? And what's your aim today? No, great questions. So this is for work, but the I work for Rasa, which is the framework we're using to build this assistant. But this particular assistant is a fun one. You take a dialect quiz and it tells you what state in the US you sound like you come from. And today we are labeling toxic language, so it will exist. I'm sorry, you're gonna see it. I'm sorry. This is not something that I condone, which is why we're having our assistant handle it. All right. All right. I'm gonna annotate that message. This is toxic language. And let's save that to training data. Dirty. I don't know that that is necessarily toxic. I think that one's in form. I think that one's in form. Yeah, oh, actually, let me just correct the intent there. That should actually be in form, I think. Save training data. A sandwich, I think that one's fine, but also it should be in form. So here you can see that it says bot challenge under here. In form would actually be the correct intent. So we're just going to go through and save that real quick. I don't know what intent that should actually be. So I'm just gonna flag this for later. That's fine, but it should be in form. All right, saved training data. Robbie says it's not toxic. Any road I'm on, this should be in form. I'm assuming you're referring to the word dirty in that context. There are instances where that could be. Yeah, so one of the tricky things with toxic and abusive language is that context does matter, but I think in that particular context it should be okay. But like if I called, you know, people from a certain group dirty, that would be toxic and abusive. I just mind my business. I think this is in form, but don't eat cake. I think this is also in form. So in form is just sort of like a large training intent that we're using for here is information that I'm changing. I don't really know what that means. I don't really know what that means. So maybe it's syllable that has a problem here. Although based on the rest of these, this user, there appears to be maybe not super good faith on the part of this particular person. Yeah, I guess I'll leave that as stop. No, deny, I think that's correct. Yep, this one's toxic. Again, inappropriate. And what we're gonna do when we get toxic intents like that is end the conversation. Yep, again, a toxic one. Yep, okay, and that's been correctly identified now. Ta-da. All right, and you can see now that this has been added to the training data, so when we see it, it will be identified as toxic along with this one. Unacceptable. All right, so that's that conversation done. Mark is reviewed. All right, this one. This one. Actually, I think this one is me as well, because I just did A for a bunch of them. Robbie says, I'm on local mode. Can I see this chat? Like the conversations that I had? No. So you would need, in order to look at the conversations that have been had with a specific assistant, you need to have login access to the Rasa server. And I've not shared access to this server. And if you are working in production and you specifically need to be like, okay, these people can review annotations, these people can write new stories and have that fine level of control over permissions, that is a Rasa Enterprise feature. So if that's something you need for work, talk to the sales team. They are great. All right. And this one looks okay, so mark that as reviewed. Got this one. Okay. And just checking these out. Hello, greet, affirm, inform, inform. Oh, this one should be inform. So it says that the intent is stop, and inform is the intent that we're using for just generally people telling us things about our assistant. Florida sun rain. Oh, I've never heard that before. Let's change this. So this is also inform. Crawfish, this should be inform. So we're just going through and correcting all of these the night before Halloween. I mean, same. That's also inform. Sub, that should be inform as well. Oop, nope. Sorry, I'm clicking badly. And save to training data. Robbie says I logged into Rasa X server, so that would be the server for your particular assistant, and you might be serving the same an assistant that was built with the same code as I did, but it will be a separate server. Access road. Okay, so this is also definitely inform. Also, this points out something that is currently a problem with the way that our assistant is working. So if I'm in the middle of filling out this form, if someone issues a bot challenge, so that was the intent that was identified here, and a bot challenge is like, hey, is this a bot? You should always say, yes, this is an assistant, a virtual assistant, because that will, people have different expectations of a virtual assistant, and you want to be honest with folks. And this is not stopping the form is the problem and answering that question, then going back to the form because of the way we're handling inputs. So I think it will be, once we have more training data, this should also be inform. Once we have more training data, we will be able to go through, this should also be inform. We'll be able to go through and make each of these. So right now what we're doing is we're just taking in any information, any text the user takes in, and then looking at it and being like, okay, which of the answers does this one match the most closely using fuzzy matching? And I don't know how well that's going to work long term. I think my preference would be to identify the entities, and we'll have a lot more. Yard sale looks good. And we'll have a lot more examples of the entities once we've labeled all this training data. Both, this should be also inform. There we go. That should be inform. Catty corner. Oh, this person is not where I'm from. Lightning bug. Oh. Okay, so the bug intent here is for roly-poly and not for firefly. So the intent is correct, the entity is wrong. But it was set correctly. Okay, so I think it's not that bad. Don't have a name for this, so this shouldn't be denied. This should also be informed. Basically, all of the responses to the questions in the quiz should be informed. Through. That is what I would call it as well. Water fountain, so this should also be informed. Data annotation, right. The state that most closely matches your language use is Maryland, followed by North Carolina and Virginia. And for those of you who are not super familiar with the United States, Maryland is right on top of Virginia, is right on top of North Carolina, and they're all on the eastern seaboard. I guess technically DC is in between Maryland and Virginia, but they still share a border because DC is pretty small. All right, so this is actually, I think particularly with the brew through answer, I think that actually sounds pretty right to me. So yeah, I think Cabbage Night and Liquid Sun are two things that I wouldn't, and Basketball Bug are also things that I wouldn't say. So interesting. All right, mark is reviewed. Rachel, are we just gonna review conversations all day? Sure are. All right. Hi. Okay. Yes. Affirm. Oh, this should also be infirm. Not infirm as in sickly, but affirm as in that is true. Affirm, inform, inform. Yep. So you can see that when I click on things, if we've already fixed them, they will be inform. If we've already fixed them, they will be yeah. Correct in the future. Wowee. So you'll notice that right here, shrimp was given the intent stop, but the confidence was really low, which, you know, it might be evidence that that's something that we should change, and we should be able to, in our NLU inbox, sort by confidence now. It's a pretty new feature in the most recent version of Rasa X, which is pretty sure that's in the current stable version. Or it will be soon. Look for that. If it's not there yet, it will be. This should be inform. Oh, Halloween's coming up as well. Affirm, that should be informed. So remember that we fixed that earlier, and now when I go to change it, it has already been changed. Street, that should be inform. Trainers, chit chat, that should be inform. Okay, and that's also been correctly identified. Autobahn, this should be informed. Also not something we really say in the United States. Autobahn is a German thing. Yard sale, inform, that's right. Rubberneckers should be inform. Frosting should be inform. Law should be inform. We're just gonna go through and fix all of these. Fireflies, maybe. Bot challenge. So that should definitely not be bot challenge. That should be inform. And also, once we have a bot challenge, that should pop us out of the form, and then we should come back to the form. And that will be, I think, something we do in the future. Inform. Inform. Form. Tennessee, Mississippi, and California. Interesting. Tennessee and Mississippi are kind of close to each other. California is not. California is on the other side of the United States. All right. Another conversation. Basketball bug, inform, 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 form. So just going through and correcting these. Did I save those to training data? I don't think I did. Sure did not. And you're probably thinking, Rachel, this is a lot of, I think this is still inform, even though it has the word deny in it. Even though it has the word no in it. And you might be thinking, hey, Rachel, there's a lot of... All right, and this has already been set to inform. Yep. Yep, that's better. Nope, that should still be informed. This is a lot of going through and looking at data and doing annotation. Yep. They don't call it, you know, machine learning science. Inform. Freeways, inform. Car boot should be informed. Also, this person is probably from the UK based on that answer. Curiosity delay. Oh, this sounds definitely not very familiar to me. Inform. Oh, okay. And we've already re-annotated that, so you can see that now it says inform correctly. This should be informed. Oh, little R ingression. So you can see how there's an R here in this spelling, cater corner, whereas I think most people in the US would say it's some variation of kitty corner, catty corner, catty corner. And if you speak a R-less dialect, so where R's aren't produced in all places, then you are more likely to add it in your spelling. So I guess a good example of that would be in, I forget which one of the Harry Potter books it is, but there's a bit in the Harry Potter book where he says the clue is like they're trying to get him to say like in spider, except he says it without the, I forget the direction it goes. Anyway, it's relevant here. They're training data. That should be informed. That's already been fixed. Beltway, that should be informed. I think I know who filled this out. I sent this to a couple of my friends for them to fill out as well. And I, based on the information I've gathered so far, I think I know which of my friends this was. I will not hurt their anonymity though, and inform. Excellent. Texas, Colorado, and Arkansas, not close to each other, and I think also, if this is the person that I think it is, not close to them, but... Alright, next one. Affirm, roly-poly, inform, inform. I think we've already fixed this one. No, we have not. Once we've gone through and done all of the, we only have a couple more conversations. We're going to go through and figure out the toxic language stuff. Robbie says, how am I able to see earlier models? I'm running the Rasa X server today. It's because there were trained models in the repo, the GitHub repo. So you're able to access those earlier trained models on Rasa X. That's been corrected. Fantastic. This should be in form. Crawdads, inform, correct. Very good. Devil's Night, this should be in form. Hoagie. Can you imagine if Americans greet each other? Hoagie, how's it going? How's your Aunt Barbara? How's she doing? This should be in form. Chit chat is an intent for people who are just trying to talk about stuff that's not related to the they're just trying to talk about stuff that's not super related to the purpose of the assistant. So it's good to have a way to handle that. Oh, it's because it's got the word hi in it. Like, hi. That makes sense. But it is not the yard sale and form. It is not the correct, it's not the correct thing for us to use here, if that makes sense. Frosting should be in form as well. Boy should be in form. Frost should be in form. Firefly should be in form. Median should be in form. And the reason I want to make sure that these are all correct is because once we get to the point where we're fixing the problem where if people have other intents in the middle of taking the quiz, we stop. Excuse me. We stop taking the quiz and start handling whatever their intent was. So if they want to stop using the assistant or whatever it is, we want to make sure that if the intent is correct and it's identified as in form, we keep that. Washington, Oklahoma, and Michigan, not super close to each other. All right, here's some toxic language. All right. Deny. This is identified as chit chat. It should actually be affirm, which means like saying yes. We should probably start from the top, huh? Oh, there we go. And it would be possible for this to not be toxic language if it was used as in-group discussion, but it would not really be possible for you to know that this assistant, it would be appropriate to use it with this assistant a priori, so this is toxic language. I don't know about help me. I think stop is an okay intent. That's toxic language. That's toxic language. I would say that one's not super, and that's toxic language. Yeah. And where do we get up to? We did that one. This one is greet. Okay, so once the greeting was used, then the assistant started. That's toxic language. They restart. Yes. That should be in form. That should be in form. This should be in form. All right, and you can see that we've already corrected that. This should be in form. Lobster. This should be in form. Yeah, this should be in form. Ah, the glamour of machine learning engineering. This should be in form. This should be in form. A scam. I guess that's in form. But I guess that's also in form. That's rude. I don't know that that's toxic. Whoop, there we go. Toxic language. This one's a little bit borderline. I'm just gonna flag it for now. I think that should be inform, but does not really have a, You know what? Let's create a new intent. I think there's a new intent, for confusion. That's toxic. Yep, there we go. Interesting. It's cutting it off. It should be toxic language. Save to training. There we go. Okay, I think this is also probably confusion. Did we add that? No, we didn't. Confusion. New intent. Training data. Training data. I think this is probably inform. Right. Deny, that looks right. This is probably confusion. And that's toxic. Nope. That one. All right. Try this one more time. I think you get into like a sort of an auto label situation when you're creating a new intent. There we go. Okay, fantastic. That one's done. All right. Agree. I think that's actually affirm instead of deny. So I think that would be a frustrating error. Sure, affirm. Inform. Should be inform. We're getting there. We got a couple more conversations. Form. Bundle. Interesting. Oh. Yeah, no, affirm is the right answer there. I just don't know. How was this slot filled? Other. Okay, yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I don't know why I zoomed out for that. Wolf's Wedding. Oh, I haven't heard that one. Shrimp. Inform. I thought we had shrimp previously. Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving does not fall directly before Halloween. In fact, it falls after Halloween. This is inform. This is inform. Okay, oh, and it already exists as training data. Inform. This is inform, but we've already corrected it. Little market, that's inform as well. Bottleneck, form. Icing should be inform. Oh, I thought we'd already added that to the training data. Maybe it was iced instead of icing, maybe? I don't know. Law, that should be inform. Weird that it was greet, but as you can see, it's pretty low confidence. This is inform. Firefly is inform. We've already corrected that. Rough is inform. Should be inform. Inform looks good. I don't know. I talk like in Michigan. That's reasonable. And this should be. This should actually be. Don't we have like a farewell? I guess by makes sense there. Yeah. Okay. So that conversation is marked as reviewed, and we got just a couple more. So doing this one, oh, there's some toxic language right away. All right. There's some toxic language. I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's... I think this is probably actually confusion. Is that a... Confusion. Save to training data. Already exists to training. Okay, so we already did that. This should be... Oop. Form. Nope, it should be in form. One sec, let's try this again. Govin says, I don't know what you're doing. So I realize this is not the most exciting thing to watch. So people have had conversations with my assistant, and what I'm doing is I'm going through and I'm looking at the intent. So this is the sort of general class of what they're trying to do with each of the things that they say. And so for the quiz portion, the intent should be in form, like it is right here. And sometimes it's mislabeled. So here you can see it's being labeled as thank you with a really low confidence. Here it's being labeled as inform with a really high confidence, 0.87. And we're just going through and we are correcting the intents to be inform when they should be. So you can see this one already exists as the training data. Should be inform. And then when we retrain the assistant, oh, that's toxic. Completely unacceptable. When we retrain the assistant, we will inform. Oh, and that's toxic. We'll go through and we'll retrain the assistant, and it will be better at identifying the general category of what people are doing. Inform. Okay, so we've already corrected this one in another conversation. Secondhand store, that's inform. That's toxic. That's toxic. Inform, yep, that's right. That's toxic. All right, it's been added. Fantastic. Glad we're done with that conversation. Oh, I gotta mark it as reviewed. All right, a couple more conversations. More toxic language. So what we're gonna do is once we have a training corpus of toxic things that people say, when they say them into the assistant in the future, we're going to add a new turn conversation. So if someone says something and it's identified as toxic language, the assistant will stop the conversation and tell them why. That's toxic. That's already been, these already been corrected. Yep. Yeah, nope. This one should be toxic as well. Now, this is a country, but also in this context, it's clearly toxic. And there's no point when our assistant asks people about what country they're from. So I'm going to say that in this instance, this is toxic language. So these are, I'm annotating things that other people's conversations with the assistant. I guess inform is right. Oh, that's toxic. That's toxic. See, in this situation, this is toxic. But if someone who is gay says, I am gay, that's not toxic. However, this is not a situation, like thinking about all the things that this assistant does, it gives you a quiz and you take the quiz. there is no situation where it encourages any discussion of sexuality. So I think bringing it up unprompted in this particular situation would be toxic. So I am going to mark this as toxic. Even though I think you should be really careful. Like if this was a therapy bot and I marked that like any discussion of queer sexualities was toxic, that would be a problem for people who were using the assistant, right? But in this particular instance, I think I'm going to go ahead and mark that as toxic. All right. Affirm. This should be inform. So I'm just going through it and fixing the intents. That should be inform. Oh, I thought we'd already fixed that. Already exists training data. Yeah. Inform. This should be inform. Inform as well. Pretty sure we've already done this one. I think I'm just gonna, I will already be told. Yeah, it already exists training data. Inform. Already exists training data. We've already fixed that one. That one was good. Frosting, this should be informed. I think we've already done this one. I think we'll get that error where it's like, hey, you already did that. Yep. Already done that one. Yep, we've already done this one. Form. I'm gonna say the don't know is part of inform. Yeah. That should be inform as well. And this should be inform, and we've already added it. All right. Okay. Yeah, and I think all of these look pretty good. I think the assistant did okay here. Govind says, I'm here for hobby purposes, learning. I have a certification in ML, and I'm in a government job in what? FUT? I don't know what that is. I'm guessing that's an acronym. Robbie says he's doing a PhD in teasing people from Delhi University. Sounds like a useful degree. All right. Next tester. Hi, okay, affirm, inform, deny. I think that's right. It should be inform. So one thing I'm noticing with this particular question is that people are probably not reading this bit, or they're just sort of like skimming it and reading it as, do you pronounce cot and caught the same? And then answering that question, and not, do you pronounce them differently or the same, and then answering one of those two options. Or they may have a partial merger, and that's what they're trying to express there, but that seems a little less likely. But I'm not going to add this as an example of an inform intent, because I think that's a really good example of a deny intent, rather. So that's inform. Someone's just restarting the assistant a bunch. Okay, so this one's done. All right. This person's from my neck of the woods. Confirm, inform. One should be inform. All right, we've already corrected that. This one should be inform. Sunshine is one I think I've actually heard before. Jovan says, I'm already a history professor. Data science is a hobby. Oh, fun. I think it's a good hobby. This should be inform. I have heard of people calling them prawns. They don't really look like prawns. I think the big thing is like prawns and shrimps have like front-facing feet. Guys have side-facing feet. That one's inform. This is inform. We've already fixed that, and you can see that we fixed that because when I go to annotate it, you can see that the correct intent has been identified because we annotated it earlier. This should be inform. Sneakers, we've already done that. Highway, we've definitely already done. Yard sale, yeah. Oh, that yard sale was right to begin with. This one has been corrected. Frosting we've already done. Oh, but it didn't show up. Interesting. Okay. So this should be in form. Boy, we've already fixed. Diagonal, I think we've already fixed. Oh, we haven't. That's the one. Save that to the training data. Firefly. Oh. Don't know why Firefly would have that, but it should definitely be in form. So bot challenge is an intent that's like, hey, are you a bot? I think I don't know is probably in form. For the particular instance of this through water fountain. For the particular instance of this this quiz, I think that makes sense. And this person got Virginia, Massachusetts, and Maryland. So probably Northern Virginia rather than Southern or Central Virginia. And then this one is done. We only got 2 more. All right. Tennessee, Texas, and North Carolina. Southerner. Who runs the media and ADL? Ah, all right. This is toxic. We're not going to tolerate this. Gonna lump all that in there. Yep. Unacceptable. Toxic. This is, I would say abhorrent, you know, completely unacceptable, and we're not going to have our assistant tolerate it. I mean, I guess this is high quality training data, at least, for toxic utterances. This should be in form. I'm suspicious. I don't know what that means, but given this tester's other interactions, I'm real suspicious. Mischief Night is the thing that people actually do say in form. That should be in form. We've already done that one. And just to be clear, there's no space for anti-Semitism or racism or sexism on this channel. That should be in form. I'm gonna Google something really quickly. Is this a slur? I don't think this is a slur. I think it is a little rude. I don't know enough about British slang. I'm just gonna highlight that one. That should be in form. This should be in form. We've already fixed that. This should be in form. I guess technically in form, although that's nonsensical. Yeah, I guess I should probably be in form. I'm just gonna flag these. I don't want them in my training data. All right, so that conversation is done, thankfully. All right, last one. All right, greet, affirm, inform, inform, inform. This should already be marked as inform. Yep. This is already correctly informed, right? This should already be marked as informed. Yep, yep, yep. This should be inform. Save your training data. Inform. Inform. This should be inform. 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 Okay. Oh. Oh, all right. This person sounds like a northerner. Form. Form. All right. Oh, this one needs help. Inform, which is great because I think we have a little bit of a southern bias in our training data so far. This should already be fixed. Yep. This should be inform. Correct. We got that. Form. Yep. Form looks good. All right. I think IA is in Indiana, Wyoming, and Illinois, which are not super close to each other. All right, so we need to add a new story for what our assistant will do when confronted with toxic language. So let's create a new story. I have a hard time remembering the exact syntax of the information that goes here. So, new story. All right, and this is toxic language. And I'm pretty sure we called our intent toxic language. Oh, one sec. We'll reconnect in just a second. There we go. Stream should be back now. Yeah. People are, it's night here. I'm gonna watch recorded lectures. Oh yeah, I know it's a little bit late on many places where people live. Toxic language, and then I think we're gonna do an utter toxic response, and then we need to end the conversation. So Rasa action to end conversation. I'm probably gonna have to look in the Rasa SDK documents. All right, I'm gonna pull up the documentation. So custom actions, default actions. So I think we have a default action that stop the conversation. Session start, deactivate form, revert fallback events, action back, affirm. All default actions can be overridden. To do so, add the action name to the list of actions in your domain. Action Rasa will then call your action endpoint and treat it as every other custom action. Purchase events, deactivate the active form and request the handling unhappy paths could be the one. Action default fallback, redo the last one, start a new conversation session. After an inactivity period, I want to end the session though. All responses, let's see all of the different events that we can have. Pause a conversation, resume a conversation, force a follow-up action. Easy to undo an action. I think pause a conversation maybe is what we're looking for. Stops the bot from responding to messages. Action prediction will be halted. I'm already in the October spirit. Halloween is a very popular holiday in the United States and one of my favorites. I really like Halloween. Ignore messages from the user to let a human take over. As a side effect, the tracker's paused attribute will be set to true. When added to the tracker, this code is used to update the tracker. Okay, so these are the events. Is there a default action that triggers it? If not, no problem. We will just write a custom action that will do the exact same thing. So, what was this called? Conversation pause. I want conversation pause, but as a default action. Stop conversation, maybe? General purpose events, handling unhappy paths. Track your progress. Here might be a better place. Of course, users will not always respond with the information you ask them. Typically, users will ask questions, make chit chat, change their mind. The way this works with a form is that it will raise an action, execution, rejection if the user doesn't provide the requested information. You need to handle events that might cause action. Okay, so this is what we're going to be using a little bit later on to fix the problem where if people want to do something else other than just answer the questions, they can't. So, strongly recommend that you build these stories using interactive learning, which is how we will do it in the future. But for now, I just need to stop the conversation. Default fallback. Form, revert fallback events. Revert events that occurred during two-stage fallback. Ask out affirmation, ask the user to affirm their intent. It is suggested to overwrite the default action with a custom action to have more meaningful prompts. Action default, ask rephrase. Ask the user to rephrase their intent. Action back. Undo the last user message as if the user did not send it and the bot did not react. Can be triggered during a conversation by entering /back if the mapping policy is included in the policy. That might actually be a better better way of doing this. Yeah. That might be a better way of doing that, to just like it just doesn't react and deletes it. Yeah. I think I'm okay with that. Yeah, I think that will work. And then I don't have to read it with my human eyes, which would be nice. Yeah, we'd prefer not to read toxic language. But also prefer that people didn't use it. Right, so let's save and retrain. And we'll set this to our active one. I guess we have to test it. I think we had like WTF as one of the things that we marked as toxic, so maybe I'll use that as my testing phrase. Robbie says, I also like Halloween. Yeah, it's a fun holiday. And we added a bunch more training data this round, so it is going to take a little bit longer, I think. That's not surprising. Training is done. All right, let's save the new model. We're going to make it the active one. And let's see what this does. I think this should hopefully be identified as toxic. No, I need something that will be identified as toxic. I don't want to say any of the things that will be identified as toxic. All right, I'm gonna say something that is a slur, and I apologize for that. Ugh. And this should be identified as toxic. And all right, so what I was hoping was that we would remove this from the conversation and remove this from the conversation and then sort of like reset back to the last action that we did. Okay, and this rewind action default fallback. So it should be action back. So the reason we got a default was that our assistant wasn't entirely sure what we should do in a situation where we see toxic language. Oh, and I didn't actually accept that. Yes, please, action back. And then it should just listen, right? Oh, and then it just restarted the session. And then it's listening again. Okay. Yeah, I think I do want an utterance as well. So I guess my question is, do we want to immediately stop the conversation? Or do we want to tell people that it's inappropriate and then reset? Because right now, what's happening is toxic language is identified and the conversation is going back to the very first action that happened, which is the conversation starting. Right? Action session start. Enrique says, how does the model identify toxic language? A lookup table or the pre-trained model does? So today we went through and we identified all the responses that the assistant had received that were toxic. And we created a new intent from those. So basically it's based on utterances that we've already identified as toxic that people said, again, inappropriate, has no place here. And I want to make that clear with the assistant. I think I want to make a custom action. I think I want to make a custom action that just stops the conversation. And yeah. I think that's what I want to do. So what time is it? We may do that next week because it's a little after 10 now. So what we have created a category that has toxic language in it. We've gone through and we've annotated a bunch of our conversations. What I'm going to do from here is tomorrow we're going to have the reading group. Friday I'm out, so there's not going to be any live coding. Next Wednesday, we'll go through and we'll create a custom action that stops the conversation. So if people use toxic language, it just stops. Nothing else happens. They can't continue conversing with the assistant. And then we'll come up together with an utterance that's like, hey, this is not appropriate. The conversation is over. And that's what we will do with that. So, thank you for joining me today. I hope this was, I know it's a little bit not the most fun topic to think about, but it's important to consider when building assistants, particularly ones that are sort of public facing, because you want to make sure you're not wrapping abusive language into your training data and potentially serving it or creating an assistant that seems to tolerate or condone that type of unacceptable behavior. Robbie says, I think we should tell people it's inappropriate and then carry on the conversation. No, so this is, I'm the one very publicly building this assistant. I think to some degree it's an extension of having a conversation with me almost, because I'm the one writing all the prompts. And I'm very clearly identified with this assistant, and I would not tolerate people saying this to me in real life. I would stop the conversation. And I think it's very reasonable for my assistant to do the same thing. So It's not going to happen to you if you don't use toxic language. All right. So I will see everybody tomorrow. Adam and I will be continuing to read our paper, which is on natural language understanding and what language models know and how we can codify knowledge and all that sort of good stuff. And we'll talk about that then. Otherwise, I will see you next Wednesday. We're going to hop back in with this project and work on a custom action just to stop the conversation, which I think is sort of similar to what you do if you were doing a human handoff, where the bot stops the conversation and then a human would pick it up. So something that might be extended into something that's a little bit more broadly useful. So thank you for joining me today. Again, sorry, I know it's not the most fun of topics, but important to deal with. And we will come back in and continue working on this next Wednesday. So have a great weekend. If I don't see you, otherwise I'll see you in the live paper reading tomorrow.